What's changed? That's the question still when it comes to the Catholic sex abuse crisis. The narrative of the Catholic sex abuse crisis is one of contrition and change, which is belied by the recent events, the recent disclosure just the past couple days of abuse in Gatlinburg by Father Panacle, I don't know how to say it, and more generally and previously by the case of the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak, Vos Estis Lux Mundi, and the young priests here in the Archdiocese of St. Louis. I'm here at St. Louis University in St. Louis, in Midtown St. Louis, the Arch is just a couple miles that way, because there's a known predator here at St. Louis University, the seminarian from the Diocese of Knoxville. His name is Wojciech Sobczak. You can Google Wojciech Sobczak Knoxville, WOJCIECH Knoxville, to understand what he did. Essentially, he's been thrown out of 3 seminaries, and also in between one of those times attacked, raped an employee of the Diocese of Knoxville, of the Cathedral of Knoxville. Now there's collusion between the Diocese of Knoxville and the Archdiocese of St. Louis to protect Sobczak, to keep him on the path to ordination. As a survivor, I know that Vos Estis Lux Mundi, the supposed Bill of Rights for survivors, issued by the Pope almost 3 years ago, is a sham. When you combine the reality of Vos Estis Lux Mundi, how little it's doing for survivors, and the behavior of Bishop Sticca, the fact that he's got another lawsuit filed against him in addition to the one that was filed coming up on 2 months ago, you have to ask the question. The question becomes more pressing: what has changed? My name is Chris O'Leary. I'm a survivor of the Catholic sex abuse crisis. I was sexually exploited, abused, and assaulted, raped in the late 70s and early 80s at the Church of the Immaculata in St. Louis, just a few miles down Highway 40 from here. Abuse that was witnessed, at least in part, by then Father, now Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the Archbishop of New York. He was just Father Dolan to me. I knew him as Father Tim Dolan. Abuse that continued on at my Jesuit high school, and then things got really bad when I went to the Archdiocese of St. Louis for help, and then Auxiliary Bishop Dolan called me back in March 2002 in the aftermath of the movie, the events portrayed in the movie Spotlight. I've been in the middle of what's going on in Knoxville in the attempts to expose Bishop Rick Sticca. I've been on the ground helping to investigate, working with Susan Vance of SNAP, in part because of my experience with Bishop Rick Sticca. If Bishop Rick Sticca has manipulated, gaslighted, tormented, terrorized, or abused you psychologically, physically, please understand this: you are not alone. Bishop Rick Sticca of Knoxville psychologically abused me, manipulated me, gaslighted me, tormented me. When I went to him for help in 2018, he led me on, trying to get me talking. He's doing similarly diabolical things in Knoxville when it comes to, and in an effort to protect the seminarian. He's committed something called DARVO, D-A-R-V-O. Attacking the person who was raped in Knoxville, reversing the victim and the offender. Out of Knoxville has come a lawsuit and a complaint, which you can find again by Googling Wojciech Sobczak Knoxville. In particular, you should look at line 107 of that lawsuit, which I suspect explains the entire sex abuse crisis. It provides the rationale for the entire sex abuse crisis. Here in St. Louis, I've tried to get the media on the story, and what they've told me is that everything is old news, that there's no new news here. which couldn't be farther from the truth. The new news is what's changed and how little has changed. The really terrifying part is the indifference exhibited by Bishop Rick Sticca of the Diocese of Knoxville, and now in collusion with Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky of the Archdiocese of St. Louis, coordinating, collaborating to protect the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak. He's now, well, for a while he was a freshman, then he was a sophomore, now he's a junior here at St. Louis University in St. Louis. But the effort to protect the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak is an incredible level of callous indifference that's putting the gay community here in St. Louis, the St. Louis University community, and the entire community of St. Louis at risk, putting a known multi-accused rapist, abuser of men at least, in the community without warning anyone. That's hardly the only thing that the Archdiocese of St. Louis and the Catholic Church are doing in St. Louis and elsewhere that are new news, that are more than just old news. Yes, you've got protecting God's children, which is helping to protect children from their own grandparents. But I was abused by a priest. The people that I know who were abused by, the maintenance man, the crossing guard. They're not subject to protecting God's children. And the worst thing about all the supposed standards when it comes to the screening of priests and seminarians is what's been revealed by the case of Bishop Sticca, the case of the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak in Knoxville, that the enforcement of standards, the Dallas Charter, Vos Estis, everything is up to and left to the discretion of the bishop. If the bishop wants to abide by a ruling by the Dallas Charter, by Vos Estis, he's allowed to. If he doesn't want to abide by those rulings, he doesn't have to. Bishop Rick Sticca of the Diocese of Knoxville is not abiding by Vos Estis, by the Dallas Charter. He's not heeding the advice of his review board. He's simply acting on his own volition. The same thing's going on here in St. Louis with Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky in terms of Vos Estis Lux Mundi, which supposedly is a law that provides a Bill of Rights for survivors, but which is being ignored by the Archdiocese of St. Louis. So what exactly has changed if the Archdiocese of St. Louis is collaborating, colluding with the Diocese of Knoxville, if Archbishop Rosansky is working in coordination, collaboration, collusion with Bishop Rick Sticca of the Diocese of Knoxville to shuffle, to hide the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak? What exactly has changed? Where's the zero tolerance of that when Sobczak's been thrown out of 3 seminaries and also is alleged to have raped the organist, an employee of the Diocese of Knoxville, the Cathedral of Knoxville? The collusion, the harboring, the coordination between the Archdiocese of St. Louis and Knoxville, to my mind, brings into question whether these are violations of RICO, the federal racketeering statute, given you've got a multi-state organization collaboration across state lines by a multi-state organization, and so much for the narrative that the Catholic Church is a bunch of individual entities. The coordination between Knoxville and St. Louis gives the lie to that. This is one large entity operating in the United States, operating out of Rome. And worse, in terms of St. Louis isn't just a dumping ground when it comes to the seminarian who's here at St. Louis University, but you've got basically the club pred of the Catholic Church is located just a half an hour from here, just down Highway 44. Without the knowledge of the people of St. Louis, without the knowledge of the people of the Archdiocese of St. Louis. Why is the Archdiocese of St. Louis in the business of taking care of the trash of the Catholic Church at a facility that isn't even secured? These men should be in prison. Instead, they're in an unsecured facility. Why is St. Louis, why is Dittmer, Missouri the dumping ground for the Catholic Church? And that goes to the general indifference and arrogance of Archbishop Brzezinski, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of St. Louis, the violations of Vos Estis Lux Mundi, the callous indifference, the refusal to care about ordinary Catholics, about lay people. Then you've got issues like the program, which I've discussed in my podcast, which was an organized effort going back to the 1970s, in which the Archdiocese of St. Louis was managing, if not protecting, known abusers. They knew exactly what was going on in the 1970s, which was how they were able to manage and, I suspect, protect abusers at different parishes, including Immaculata, Mary Queen of Peace, St. Joe Manchester. Then there's the enabling by the press of St. Louis, and worse, by the law enforcement agencies. Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, the FBI is involved in this effort to enable and protect the Catholic Church, and worse, the Missouri Attorney Generals. Both Missouri Attorney Generals are involved and are disregarding crimes like perjury, violations of the Mann Act. And I'm talking about prior former Missouri Attorney General, now Senator Josh Hawley, and current Missouri Attorney General and U.S. Senate candidate Eric Schmidt. They are involved in the effort to protect the Archdiocese of St. Louis. Both Hawley and Schmidt are involved in this effort to protect the Archdiocese of St. Louis. People will criticize survivors and say that survivors are only trying to hurt the church and terrorize the church, but the fact is that survivors and their lawyers and their lawsuits are the only way that the Catholic Church is being held accountable. They're the only means that survivors and Catholics have of holding their church accountable. Survivors and their lawyers are providing a service to the Catholic Church and to the world. Only when survivors act, in the case of Wojciech Sobczak and the organist from Knoxville, and now Father Punicle, and the incident that happened in Gatlinburg, Tennessee a couple of years ago, for which he was only recently held accountable and removed. Only when survivors act does the Catholic Church act, which I find intolerable and which is driving me. It's scary for me, but I'm going to come to Knoxville over the weekend. It's April 26th. I'm going to be in Knoxville over this weekend to stand vigil in front of St. Mary in Gatlinburg and the cathedral in Knoxville, Tennessee, to stand vigil for survivors, trying to bring to account, to hold to account, make people aware of the misdeeds of Bishop Rick Sticka, the case of the seminarian Wojciech Sobczak. And I'm actually considering the involvement of now U.S. Senator Josh Hawley and candidate for U.S. Senate Eric Schmidt. I'm considering a run for the United States Senate. This situation with the Catholic Church, the handling the sex abuse crisis, still on April 26, 2022, is unacceptable, and things have to change. If Jesus Christ can do what he did, entering Jerusalem on Palm Sunday to a certain and known fate, then you and I and we can do this. And we can't just do this. It's not just that we can do this. It's that we must do this for the future of the Catholic Church and all of society.